featured in the Virginia pilot years ago. Wendell's an inspirational voice to myself and others as we started to formulate our Virginia chapter north of NOMA. So we're excited to hear his words later this afternoon. In just a few short moments, we'll turn it over to him. I'm going to turn it over to Zakiya Wiggins, who is the president of North Carolina NOMA, to go over a little housekeeping items.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope you can hear us well. So a few housekeeping items. We just want everyone to remain muted so we can hear our speakers, as well as keep your cameras off as we will be recording this session. And throughout, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat and make sure to get those questions answered towards the end. I'd like to take a second to introduce Daniel Mai. Dan is the NCNOMA secretary. He is an HR professional at Little with over 15 years of experience with partnership development, program management, and talent acquisition. I will turn it over to Dan.
Thank you, Zakiya. And I am so excited to be here this afternoon with Wendell Green. We had a delightful conversation recently about his career, and there's a lot of overlap in terms of the Passing the Torch series and really the concept behind that. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you this afternoon and have everyone else learn a little bit more about your journey. So lots of information to share. We'll definitely be answering the questions on the question board, but to kick things off, Wendell, I always like to start these conversations off with why you got into architecture. It's always, everyone has their own story of how they found their way into this wonderful profession. Can you share a little bit about how architecture found you or you found architecture?
Good question. I got interested in architecture when I was 6 years old. I was interviewed by a local paper about my first day of school. And I made it clear, and incidentally, I was a cute little guy too at 6 years old. And they wanted to know what I liked about the first grade. And I said, oh, I love recreation, going outside and playing outside, but you know, I really like to draw. So at 6 years old, drawing was relaxing to me. We did strange things like expressions with flowers and squares and circles, and it was just fun and relaxing, because I don't have to tell you, in the first grade, it's supposed to be fun, but some of the subject matter was a little stressful. But anyway, I would say I got interested in architecture when I was 6. And from there, I met my first architect when I was 13. And it was an registered architect, and he was doing an addition to our church. And I just watched him, and I was just marveling what he was saying. You know, we want to balance this out, and we want to start this way, and we want to use this type of material. So that impressed me as I was, 13 years old. And from there, I had mechanical drafting like most of us in high school. And then from college, couldn't go to the high-tech schools because couldn't afford it. But I made the best of what I could do. And I was blessed to be able to go to Norfolk State, get in drafting technology, and then Chicago Technical College, and really got more thirsty as I got involved with just drawing, mechanical drawing, isometrics, 2-point perspectives, and multi-orthographic projection. And it was really like a science. It was very interesting. So that's how I got interested in architecture.
That's great. And then, after school, do you still remember what your first project was?
Okay. When I graduated from college, the first job I got was working for the Housing Authority in Norfolk. And guys, I was coloring maps like I was doing in high school, junior high school, no, in elementary school, really. So didn't like it. So after 6 months, there was a Beacon architectural minority firm called Livis. And I looked them up, and I would go there once a week and ask, is there any way I could get on, to work there? And bless his heart, Bill Milligan at Livis told me, just show up Monday morning at 9 o'clock. Okay, yes, sir. And that was how I really got started in really working in the profession. And my first project, guys, that's rough. I'm gonna say the majority of my first projects were multi-housing projects, where I was working on foundation plans and really dimensioning and Lord have mercy, when it came to dimensioning, that's where I was making some mistakes, trust me, and that was embarrassing. So I got to the point where I came up with ways you could balance off how to deal with feet, inches, make sure it balanced right. So I learned how to adapt to how to dimension. And keep in mind, during my time, we drew by hand. All this CAD stuff, forget it. I showed some of my guys what I did when I was drawing custom homes, and the eyes pop out. So I'm old school when it comes to actually by drawing by hand.
Yeah, and similar to schools, I know that pulling all-nighters is a very normal thing to do. How is that in the professional world, doing everything by hand?
I remember drawing by hand, and you start, let's say, like 7 in the evening, and looking out the window, and the sun would be coming up. And I'm still drawing. Those days are gone. I do not do that anymore. But I have people that work for me, and I drive them crazy. I let them know that we have deadlines, and I try to use psychology on them in regards to trying to finish projects in a timely way. But I would say my first project, I was dealing with multi-housing, and by dealing with that, you guys know you had a lot of dimensions that you have to balance out correctly. The overall dimensions got to work out with the detailed dimensions.
Absolutely. So fast forwarding a little bit, so you got past that first multifamily project, and then I'm sure as there's more projects that you're completing, getting done, and building up on your experience, I'm sure there was a pivotal project in your career that really kind of set the tone for what you were going to do next. So, is there a project that comes to mind that kind of has that significance in your career?
I'm going to say this, it's more than one. It's just an honor for me to be the chief architect for the mayor of Norfolk. I do all of his funeral homes. And right now I'm designing his 5th funeral home and doing a study for his 6th funeral home. So it's humbling to know that I'm dealing with not only the mayor's project, but even my church. For my church, I did the Family Life Center, which it has an academy for kids that start at 3 years old. They teach those kids Spanish and French. And I had an opportunity when it first opened. After about 3 or 4 months, I went over, and the director of the academy said, "Kids, this is the architect of our building." And I introduced myself, and they sang to me. 3- and 4-year-olds sang to me in French. Couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. So that is one very, very important, dear to my heart project. And there are others, especially churches. I have dealt with little rickety termite infested churches, And one comes to mind is in Yorktown, Virginia, Zion Prospect Baptist Church. To fast forward, that church now is a regional church that has, we reversed the sanctuary. We created office spaces. We have a state-of-the-art restaurant / banquet facility. The kitchen is really state-of-the-art. You go in Zion Prospect's banquet facility, you think you're in the Marriott. So that church was a little rickety church, and now it is used by other churches for banquets. Just like the Maury Center that I designed in Norfolk for my church. Other churches use it, other organizations use it. So it is good to design something that is a place to be. So those are two projects that I think of. And then obviously the funeral homes, you think, oh, that's morbid. Not really. The funeral homes that I've designed for Metropolitan Funeral Home, all 5 of them have what we call repast rooms. And there are people that are renting those repast rooms for marriage anniversaries, workshops, in the funeral home. So it is important for people to realize architecture is vast. You know, you can just be a dreamer for all kinds of things. And I was blessed to have the mayor of Norfolk to give me that opportunity, and he won't use anyone else. Cross my fingers.
I'll cross my fingers for you too. So, you know, just reading, really doing some research on you, and then, you know, also in speaking with you, a lot of your projects are deeply ingrained in community design and really designing places. When you approach the design process, how much of the sense of place in the community comes into play when you're approaching each of the projects that you've won or get contracted for?
Okay, that's very important. As an architect, believe it or not, you don't know it all. So what I do when a client calls me is listen to them first. Listen to their dream, because they're the ones that have brooded about a dream that they have. So as an architect, you have to listen to them and interpret in design for their approval of what they're trying to accomplish. So the first thing you got to do is listen. Once you listen, then you take your craft and you interpret it through drawings and graphics and then give it to the client for them to brood over it, think about it, see where they make adjustments. And that's the other thing. Being a designer, I'll never forget Albert Walker at Livas. He said, a true designer is never finished. What does that mean? That means that as you're designing, you do not have a final, ultimate problem solved. You solve it for your client, but when you really think about it, there's some alternatives to that design that you can always change. So that's important as an architect, to be able to be flexible, and your interpretation isn't necessarily always the right one. Listen to your clients, always listen to them first, and then use your craft of what you have trained yourself to do.
That's great. So I'm going to go back to one of the projects that you mentioned, and helping with a school. And I was kind of curious, was this is the maybe the initial inspiration for your other career within academia. You've taught for many years. At what point did you realize that you really wanted to start passing that torch and kind of sharing that knowledge forward? When was that?
Wow. There were multiple times, and I will share this with you. I believe in career days. I believe in whenever people call, and they will call. I had a call from a church, another church. They wanted me to come in and talk to young ladies that were, their ages were between 7 to 10. And it must have been about 30 some of them. And I started talking about the profession, and obviously the first thing they went, and you'd be surprised, those young kids are smart. And at that time, there were not as many young ladies going in our profession. I remember the first time I started taking the exam, man, you would be lucky to see 15, 20% in there of female. So they asked me, well, how many architects are ladies? And I thought about it and pondered. I said, well, you know, I do know one or two. It's not many, but it's open. Will you be the next one to be in the profession? Think about it, young ladies. And I approached it with them that way. So that to me was the beginning of thinking about passing that torch. And then when I started teaching, I taught in a community college and I was teaching architecture. But before that, they had me teaching apprentices how to read drawings and draw. And some of the students in that apprentice program would come back and say, you know, I got a drafting job here from welding. Instead of welding, they're letting me now draw. And I started thinking, and I was able to move into more of the architectural courses. And in the architectural courses at Tidewater Community College, I was getting students that were interested in architecture that were planning on going to UVA, Hampton University, Howard, Virginia Tech. And my approach was very simple. How many people in here are interested in being an architect? You know, I'd have a full class, and you know, most of them would raise their hands, and I would say, why? And they would say, oh, I want to do this, and I would say, well, here's what you got to realize. To be an architect, for us who believe in God, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Since that time, you better have the knowledge, or you better know somebody that can give you that knowledge. Think about it. Architecture is vast. Everything you do in life is associated with architecture in some form of fashion. Did I answer the question?
Absolutely.
Okay, because you know I can ramble. I see a couple of people on this, a couple of my people that I'm pushing to set for that architect's exam. Glad to see them.
That's a great segue, actually, because my next question was just around the path to licensure. That it's a challenging path. Those exams are daunting. Life gets in the way. Can you share a little bit about your story there and some of those challenges?
I could write a book on mine. I think the key to me being able to become a licensed architect, it's almost like pledging a fraternity. You know, you got to know the history, and you got to know this about this organization, and you got to be able to say the Greek letters, and you got to, so in other words, when I started off, I didn't come from an accredited school, guys, in architecture. Norfolk State is not accredited. However, I was taking courses that related, and my degree was in that. So from that being knowing that I didn't have that accredited degree, I then enrolled in Chicago Technical College, which I was able to get a diploma in architecture, but still not accredited. And during that time, you could take what we call the qualifying exam before you would take a part of the rest of the profession. So I got through the qualifying exam. My Lord, I had been so exposed in so many angles of architecture, got through the qualifying exam, ladies and gentlemen. Then I had to take the professional exam. And because of that, I started drawing a lot. As a matter of fact, I took a couple of courses at Hampton in presentation and everything. So that I would really master my craft in drawing, because keep in mind, we had to draw by hand, even for the design part, which was 12 hours, ladies and gentlemen, 8 o'clock in the morning till 12 o'clock at night. So the first time I did that, I think I had a culture shock, and I'll never forget it. It was designing a library, and like a dummy, I cut down a tree on the site. So after that first year, I started, like I said, I took additional training at Hampton in presentation, and took some things on the side, you know, how to draw this way. So that next year, I had, for the design part, I had a fire station and municipal building. Well, I finished that in 9.5 hours and got that under my belt. But then there was one part of that exam. It was a 9-part exam during my time. There was one part of that exam I couldn't get for years. It was called pre-design. After analyzing it, and I heard one young lady when we were going in, and you had to go to Richmond, Virginia at that time, and she said, you know, one thing about pre-design, it's almost like everything. It's site planning, and it's conceptual, it's a little history, a little that. And I thought about it. I went, oh Lord, that is true. So what I started doing was I started talking to civil engineers. A couple of my friends are civil engineers. I started talking to people that are in history, learning a lot about the historical concepts of, and yeah, I got McGinnis and Stein book. That's an expensive book. So I would go through that a lot. And yes, it is, how can I put it? Ladies and gentlemen, you do not fail that exam until you fail it when you stop. Did you hear what I just said? If you take that exam and you get disappointed because you did not get that section or sections, you just had a setback. You did not fail. You have to keep your face in the place. You have to listen to other architects that have made it. What is it that you did? How did you do it? Listen to people in the profession and keep your face in the place. Don't give up. I'm a witness here. If I can make it, you can make it.
I love that one.
Hope I answered that question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're really all of your responses so far today, it really centralizes around perseverance and overcoming those challenges and setbacks, and really pushing the importance of that value forward. So, you know, I think that's a true lesson from today's conversation. So kind of fast forwarding to present day, obviously the architecture has evolved quite a bit, and there's a lot going on now. You know, where do you see the current state of things? Where do you see the current challenges for today's professionals?
Let me share this with you. And I'm hoping that you all do get the opportunity to go to AIA and NOMA conferences. About 5 years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago, when President Obama got out of office, the AIA had a convention in Orlando, and I'm a member of that too. And our keynote speaker was Michelle Obama. And the president of the AIA stood there and said, First Lady, we're so glad you're here. You know, can you give us any insight and wisdom and knowledge of how can we get more young people interested in architecture? And he said, and we, you know, most of us go to career days, and we, you know, and we go to the high schools and we do this. And she went, time out. I hope one or two or three of you were at that session, because what she said was, wait a minute, you're going to have to start before that. you're going to have to go into the elementary school. She said, how many architects are in here? So our president said, oh, we got about 16,000. She said, whoa, think about it. If every one of you, or most of you, were to go to an elementary school with just a little bit of your drawings and work it out with the career people at that school on an elementary level, and sit down with just 1 or 2 kids and tell them what you do and how you do it. Can you imagine how you could possibly influence young people that are before, because by the time a lot of kids get in high school, they already made up their minds what they want to do. But a kid that's in elementary school, they still are dreamers. They think they can do everything. I want to be a football player, but they don't hear from us as architects. If they knew what you did in regards to this building and that building. Like when I was a kid, I got to admit, it was God's will for me to see my first architect when I was 13. And I just marveled over it because it was different. And lo and behold, she mentioned that even Barack Obama wanted to be an architect when he was 13. I went, whoa. A lot of people that you know, everybody will tell you, oh, I remember when I wanted to be an architect. Well, what happened? Why is it that you changed? Is it too hard to be an architect? It's hard to win the Super Bowl, isn't it? But when you win it, you go where? To Disney World, which incidentally, I have a 6-year-old grandson and I make sure we go twice a year. So it's important for us to talk to young kids. Bring them into your offices. I don't care where you are. Bring kids in there. You know, you have relatives that are nieces and nephews and their friends. Bring them into your office and let them look around. That's what I do. If you look behind me, for the ones that can see me, look what's behind me. There are drawings. And that's important for them to see color, excitement. And incidentally, believe it or not, Walt Disney was in his own way an architect. He was a dreamer. And look what happened since he started with what? That little dumb mouse. Look at it now. So you, architects, you're dreamers. Let people know who you are. Don't be ashamed of being an architect, even though we don't get paid like doctors and lawyers. But we still have more impact than you can ever imagine. Because those doctors, those lawyers, whoever they are, they have to be in what? Law firm offices, hospitals. They can't design it, you can. So you have a lot of influence on people in general. Hope I answered the question.
Oh, yes. So I always love this kind of question. It's like, now that you've had a career over 45 years in the AEC, you know, what would you do differently if you had the opportunity again? And would you follow this path again? I think I know the answer to that one, but I wanted to know, what would you do differently?
Well, on one side of me is saying I wouldn't do anything different. And the reason why I'm saying that is, for the people that work for me, they know my struggle. But look at me now. So on that side, it's like anything that's worth it, it's not easy. If you want something bad enough, you're going to go through the hard times. And it's nothing like that victory. It's nothing like that victory. It's sweeter, because if it's easy, you're really not going to treat it in the way that you would when you know what it is to struggle and to dream and have disappointments. And then after those disappointments, you just persevere, keep your face in the place, don't give up. And then at the end, you're victorious. You know, and that's important for, I feel, for people behind me watching and observing. Well, how did you do that? his perseverance. And then I joked him out. I was too stupid to know I couldn't do it.
Oh, man. Well, you know, my only other sort of area was that I know we shared a common common background in music. And
I know you were going, see, I knew
of
you were
course
going to
I
go there.
am.
All right, guys. Okay. All right. Daniel and I had a little conversation. He knows that I work with Norfolk State University Marching Spartan Legion Band. And yeah, we're just getting back from Pasadena, where we just tore the place up. And then we are ranked in 2 votes, top HBCU band in the nation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. But I think about and reflect back when I was in college. Yes, I played percussion instruments through middle school, high school, and I was section leader at Norfolk State for 4 years. And the interesting and beauty of music that I want you all to think about is, and yeah, I probably would have tried to have been a band director. But music and architecture, they have similarities, don't they? If you really think about it, and some of you probably play piano, or you probably played in your high school and college bands. What is it that you do in music? You deal with what? Rhythm. You deal with time. All right. You deal with structure. You deal with balance. It's the same thing in architecture, and you have all these moving parts. So in band and music, you have all these instruments that have intricate roles to play, and each one is important to create that kind of blend. Well, in architecture, it's the same thing. You're dealing with how to design in a way that the civil engineer is going to be able to do his job. That structural engineer is going to have to do his job. The mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers are going to have to do their jobs. And it's all related to information and math. Project managers dealing with how much is this going to cost. So yeah, I would say my second pet peeve is dealing with music. I joke the band directors when I get stressed and I know it's football season or whatever, I'll drop what I'm doing in my office and go on campus, put my hands in just to stand there to see them work over and over and over and over again. It's the same thing. The more you practice, the better you're going to get. You're going to make mistakes. That's how life is. And I'll tell anybody taking that exam, get your nose bloody. Go ahead and get the exposure. Don't be afraid. Don't be ashamed. And just let people know, look, I am setting for the exam for my experience of what it is to be an architect. So if you don't get it, that's okay. I just have a setback, but I'm going back next month. Because the beauty now, you don't have to wait a whole year or 6 months. During my time, if you didn't get certain parts of that exam, you had to wait for 6 months or a year. So yeah, that's, Daniel, you would have to bring that up about music. So I can write a book on that too.
I think it's a beautiful analogy of the discipline and the commitment that it takes to be successful in this industry. It ties into everything that we do and kind of comes back to communication and collaboration, especially like since we're working in teams. So I just wanted to say thank you for your time today. I really enjoyed getting to learn more about you and getting a chance to kind of speak with you with this platform and especially between the NOMA family and just really enjoyed it. So just kind of curious if there's any questions from the audience.
Yes, we have 2 questions. So speaking of projects, Mr. Green, do you have any strategies for acquiring clients and getting projects?
Ooh. Here's what you have to do. I mentioned it already, having your face into place. The way you will, all right, that's a big, that's a challenging question. I'm going to share this with you. As a minority architect, we really don't get the opportunity to blow smoke how great we are. Did you hear what I just said? There are companies that have marketing people that work for them to share with our community their background and exposure of what experiences they have already had in dealing with airports and dealing with hospitals. We've done this hospital, that kind of hospital. So what you have to do, in my opinion, is have your face in the place, go to groundbreakings, even though it's for other architects, right? And recommend people to come into your office. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm an architect. Come by my office. Have your face in the place. Always be exposed, and people watch you and say, you know, that guy over there. Let me share something with you. Wow. There was an article, and that's what started that torchbearer theme that I have. Had a gentleman, I went to this, I guess you could say press release. This gentleman is, he's a developer, and he was not getting an opportunity of getting work as a developer. So he had this press release, and I went there, and the president of the NAACP said, Wendell, you had to talk to him. I said, oh, okay. I went over and gave him my card. Hey, how are you? You know, hey, we went to the same high school and so and so. He said, oh yeah? I said, yeah, I was there a couple of years before you. I'm like 20-some years older than, and he laughed. And he looked at my card and he said, you an architect? I'm like, yep. This is what I do and this and that. And other people heard it, including some TV people. And I was explaining to him what we did. And that next thing you know, guys, I was being interviewed by 3 different local TV stations. And yeah, that article in the pilot, but you see what I'm saying? Go places and have your face in the place. I'm gonna cut it at that because I could go on. I hope I answered the question.
That was great. I have another question. So you started touching on mentorship, and we were wondering if you could elaborate on that, and have you ever participated in any mentoring programs?
I get so many calls from, believe it or not, parents. My Johnny is interested in architecture, and we look in the your website, because yeah, I have a website, thank God, thanks to Johnny Lassiter, my go-to guy for my website. And we looked you up, and you know, can you kind of give us a little of your time? Sure. So I would have them even come to my office on a Saturday. One night I was working late, about 8:30 at night, and I got a phone call, guys. And it was a young man. He was in middle school. He said, I didn't know I was going to catch you, but my name is so-and-so, and I would go to such and such middle school, and I like architecture, but can you kind of explain to me some questions? I said, sure, what do you have? And he started asking certain questions, you know, how I got in the field and how much money you make, and you know, is it hard, and you know, you need a lot of math. And I was explaining everything, and he summed up and said, Mr. Green, thank you so much. And he brought a tear to my eye. He said, I wish you much success in your practice. That was a middle school kid. So with that being said, I keep getting things like that. And you know, my theme is torchbearer. Been beat up, talked about, you name it, been praised, all of it, over these 40-some years. And here I am leaning against that rock. And that person on that horse is that young man in middle school. It's the 5 people I have working for me that are setting for the exam. And yes, they have setbacks, but they better not give up. I have one of my students that gets so discouraged. I tell that person, I'm gonna tell your mama on you. because her mother wanted to be an architect. I'm not going to take it from you saying I'm not going to take this exam anymore. You better have your face in the place over and over again. The more you take that exam, this, and I got to say that, the more you take that exam, yeah, you see, it's different now. It's more application. So you got to be in an architect's office to really get the application. During my time, you had to, Lord have mercy, you had to remember what facade, what transition of year was this facade, and who came up with this design. You know, it's good to know, but to be a good architect, you got to practice like a doctor. You're in practice. I'm old as dirt and I'm still learning. I enjoy going to those continuing ed seminars. So I hope that answered the question.
Yes, thank you. I think that is all the questions I have so far. So if anyone else has any questions, you can ask them in the chat. You can come off mute, ask them directly.
Yes, Mr. Green, I have a question. How are you today?
Doing great.
Yes, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually Joel, but it's okay, you know, still. But I also have an interest in music. You know, well, I was a musician as well. I was a percussionist as well. But in middle school and high school and college, you know, I was at FAMU marching 100. So
the marching 100. Oh,
yes, sir.
Everybody hear that? Hey, look, I'm not gonna rub it in. I'm not. You know, man, I admire you guys. And I know you guys travel a lot. You guys that are not in band, I'm sorry. This is important. Hey, man. So you play percussion?
Yes, sir.
What you play? Snare, cymbal, bass drum? What do you play?
I play the quints.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's not easy, guys. Quints are not easy, guys. I know what he's talking about. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, you know, in what years were you at Norfolk State performing? You know, what was your time period? Mine was in the early 2000s, middle to late 2000s. You know, 2003, 2008. What years were you in there?
Man, and it's funny, Joel. I was section leader of our percussion section for 4 years. You went, oh Lord. You must have had dumbos under you. No, the band director looked at me as a leader. I would not say I was the best percussionist. I could sight read and I was darn good at what I did. And to answer your question, you ready? In the late 60s, my last year was 2017. So there are things that your band would be doing on TV. And Super Bowls and all of that. I marveled over that, right? See how things turn around. Oh my Lord. And so it was, yeah, the late 60s is when I was in the band. But during that time, Norfolk State's band has always been a regimental, military-oriented flavor. Right. Because not only was I in the college band, we were in the ROTC band too. I had to be in the ROTC band. So there were drum cadences I had for the ROTC band that I did not use for the Marching Spartans. During my time, we were the Marching Spartans. And we turned in 1975 to Spartan Legion. And defining a legion, that's an army of 4,000 and 5,000. Oh, you've been doing a little. Go ahead, man. We need to talk some more. We need to talk some more.
For sure, man. So, yeah, for sure.
That's when I was in the band during that time, and yeah, even during that time, we did play for at that time the Los Angeles Rams and the Baltimore Colts when they were in Baltimore. So we even played for. That was my time when we played for an NFL game. So.
Wow. Thank you again for thank you again for your time. Thank you again for your time and your insight on the profession, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, man.
Thank you. This was a wonderful conversation. I think one thing I would maybe ask is, could you elaborate a little bit on your experience at Norfolk State? And because I guess most people, there's not many architects from Norfolk State.
That's right.
So I can you elaborate a little bit on that. I just think that's
Yep,
a wonderful.
I sure can. I sure can.
fact.
Fast forward at Norfolk State, they have a 2-year program, and it's an associate degree in architecture, which means that you can matriculate over to an accredited school. And I go over to Norfolk State to critique seniors' work. So their instructors say, well, look, we have an alum that's a registered architect, and he's going to be coming in. And when I come in, you would think like, oh yeah, we're glad to see it. They're scared to death. So I have to cut the ice, but I do give them tough love. So now what you're going to realize is, to be a registered architect today, you're going to have to go to an accredited school. You can't do it the way I did it. And I tell them, you know, it's like in the military. I started off as a buck private, and now I am a general. You, with your associate degree, gives you a good orientation of architecture, because you deal with CAD and you deal with designing, but you're going to really deal. And to make a long story short, one of my guys finished Norfolk State, and he was in the band. He was Mr. Spartan. He matriculated from Norfolk State with a degree in building construction technology, which really gave him an up in regards to the components of materials. He went over to Hampton, and he did exceptionally well. He did not have to go 5 years, obviously. You know, he was like 2 years, 2.5 years, and he got his master's in architecture. So he was really, really good, to the point that the department chair at Hampton said, well, Wendell, you got any more guys like that at Norfolk State? So I deal with students at Norfolk State. I go back, and yeah, at Hampton, I love Hampton because it is an accredited school, and I want to keep it that way. 2 of my people, I hope one of them or 2 of them are on this line, and they teach there, and I critique the students' work. And going back to Gary, when he was doing his 5th year design, you know, evaluation, not only was I there to critique what he had done, but my mentor, John Spencer, wow, was there. So we took a picture with Gary, and it's priceless. I have it in my office. I wish I could show it to you. So I hope I answered your question. If I didn't, kind of elaborate a little bit more.
I think that was good. And please share that picture with us so we can post it on our
Let me
site.
see if I can show. Hold on.
Okay.
All right. Let me see if you can see it.
Yeah.
See the picture? All right, there I am. And the guy in the center, that's Gary. And our mentor, I call him Big John. Big John, gosh, what is he now? About 94. And he will call from time to time, and I admire him. I make sure I talk to Big John whenever I can, because whew, he's my mentor, guys. As old as I am, I too have a mentor. He was department chair at Hampton. He is AIA emeritus. He doesn't practice anymore, but he will give me his 2 cents worth for what he feels I should be doing.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Please share us a digital copy so we can put it on our website. I don't know if we have any other questions.
I do. Hi, sorry. I'm Tony in here, so I love to hear all the things that you're saying. So I just wanted to know, other than keeping your face in a place, do you have, okay, let me start my video, sorry. Hi.
Hello.
Hi. So other than keeping your face in a place, which of course is probably the number one most important thing, do you have any other advice for or keys to your long-lasting, kind of long-standing career? I mean, that's a really long time to be practicing and be thriving, and still, even through all the decades and the changes in the profession, how have you navigated that? Just talk a little bit about that, I guess, please.
Well, yeah, okay. Here's what you got to keep in mind. And as a matter of fact, if you really think about it, for the people that are setting for the exam, and you got to do, what is it, 3,500 hours. But on there, you'll notice it's even civic activities. So I reflect back, oh my Lord, when I was a young whippersnapper and had black hair and skinny, I joined the Norfolk JCs. Oh, my. By joining that organization, it taught me structure in regards to organization. So my answer to you is get involved with civic kinds of things. And in doing that, they will know who you are, because it's so rare for them to have in their organization a student or an intern, architect, or someone that is in the midst of trying to become an architect. People will come to you. The biggest problem is they're going to want you to, I want to add on to my house. Or, you know what I'm talking about. Everybody I got so paranoid at one time, I didn't want to say what I did, because everybody wanted you to work on their project and don't have any money now. They want, but anyway, so I would say, make sure you have, when I say keep your face in the place, I'm saying also be involved with civic organizations. Your church, be involved with your churches, synagogue, whatever, have your face in the place, be high exposure, because that's marketing. We don't have the kind of money, I didn't and still don't, to have one or two people that fill out all these forms for you to get qualified for this. And I can tell you, I have been on some of these, what you call associate teams going after projects. And I'm going, oh my Lord, they're putting $20,000, $30,000 trying to get this one job and they don't get it. I don't see how they can spend $20,000, $30,000. It's like throwing it in the trash to me, which incidentally, I started off like that doing those proposals. I stopped. And then you were to read the article that was put out, what was it now, 4 years ago. I put it for a project in Virginia Beach and it was not shortlisted. Most of you know what that is, to be short. I wasn't shortlisted, so I called them. I said, well, look, who did you shortlist? Come to find out, they had shortlisted 3 large firms. I said, well, you were talking about small projects. Yeah, but the answer they gave me was, we feel that you are too small. Can you believe that? So I said, well, can I have my proposals back? Excuse me? I said, yeah, I need my proposals back. Well, what do you want? Because I can recycle them. That's money to be doing all them pretty color pictures and all that stuff. So to answer your question, you know, that's money. So I want you to know, get involved in civic things. Get involved. Believe it or not, fraternities, sororities, like in your case, something involved at Hampton, different organizations that you can belong to. Get involved and have your face in the place. Hope I answered your question.
Thank you, you did. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Looking forward to seeing you.
All right now. I'm in North Carolina now.
Got it.
NCNOMA represent.
Yes, I am in fact a paid member now.
Yes. All right. Well, I think that kind of wraps it up for today. I'm sure everyone has to head back, but Virginia, NOMA, or Ian, do you have anything, kind of closing statements?
No, I don't have any closing statements besides just thank you. Thank you for this conversation. And I hope that everybody can join us next Thursday for part 2. Yeah, so thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you, and I guess have a great afternoon. Thank you again, Wendell.
All right, guys, you take care.
Bye,
Have your
everyone.
face in the place.
Face in the place. Take care.
Thank you, Mr.
Bye-bye.
Green.
You're welcome.